Today, let's talk about the race for number one and how Ohio State is not only there, they're there by a long shot, but could sew up the greatest recruiting class in the history of the sport. But there are some comers, and we got to talk about them after the bumper.
Don't be cornering me. Hold up. Time. You gotta help me with that corner shit.
What's up, kid folk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. It's always college football related, sports related. We have a good time. Today, we got to talk about Ohio State being the number one ranked class in the 2021 cycle and those that are probably going to push them. Now, I do believe that Ohio State's going to finish with the number one class in this cycle. They are already just above their average rank. I mean, they're at like 95.3, which is ridiculous because classes that have an average ranking of 94 per player are almost unheard of. Bama's done it. Ohio State's done it twice, though, since 2010. Also add in here, they are already ahead of their score for last year where they had the number 5 class in the country. So think about this. With 17 commits, they already have the number 5 class in the 2020 cycle that had 25 commits in it. And that's what we're looking at here. We're looking at about a number of 25 for all of the schools. So those that have filled up quickly or gotten 2/3 of the way quickly only have a few spots left for some very, very highly rated recruits. It's another reason why I don't expect Tennessee to stay at number 2, though they're just ahead of North Carolina there and Clemson. But you're looking at quality and quantity. They have 21 commits in there. Only about 6 or 7 of them are 4-star or better, and you need about 18 to finish as like the number 2 class in the country. Ohio State, meanwhile, has not just the 17 commits, but they have 11 4-stars and 3 5-stars to go with this class, and those 4-stars are highly ranked 4-stars. A bunch of kids in the top 100, including guys like, yes, Tamise Adeleye and Evan Pryor and Travion Henderson, and on it goes, right? So looking at what it would have to take for perhaps them to finish with the greatest recruiting class of all time, where they got to reach a number of 324.63, they have to add at least 2 more high targets and 1 5-star. So the guys that we expect them to get, right, or expect them to have the best opportunity to get, for instance, would be JT Tuiamalo and Emeka Egbuka, and of course JC Latham, who is the one wild card in here. I think most folks have JT and Emeka either going to Ohio State or Washington as the crystal balls continue to roll in. But Egbuka is also just being heavily recruited by the likes of not just Washington, Ohio State, but Clemson. And we know how they feel about being able to win top recruits. JT is also being recruited by Alabama, Georgia, so forth, so on. But there's more to say on that. Mostly what we're looking at here is if you add Tuiamala, Egbuka, Latham, and then a couple of guys like Tywone Malone and Hudson Wolf, you're looking at a class that finishes at 323.01, right? That's about 1.6 points away from the target of 324.62. And you could add a couple of more guys in there to help you get past that on the calculator. But it's still a ways, right? You still got some work to do. And there's really no room for error when you're trying to overcome that number with 3 fewer commits. And that's the thing to underscore. Florida's 2020 class had 28 commits in it, right? Ohio State is trying to get over that with 3 fewer guys in the boat. Now, per average, I think they would finish well above 95, which would give them the best overall average of any class in the rankings era, and they're well on their way to be able to do that. But there are also folks that are pushing, like Georgia, who has finished in the top 3 2 of the last 3 years and finished with the number 1 class in 2020. And if they were able to land guys like Corey Foreman and Mason Smith, who seem to be a package deal, they have said repeatedly they want to play together. And there's really about 4 places, 5 if you count, 4 places that I think Corey Foreman and Mason Smith could end up, right? One of those is, of course, Georgia, who has an opportunity to not only add him, but Amarius Mims and a couple of other really talented running backs in Donovan Edwards and LJ Johnson. We know that Kirby Smart will finish strong. We know that they've had a tremendous recruiting class the last couple of years, and they already got Brock Vandegrift fitted for this class. And Corey Foreman and Mason Smith could swing the balance in favor of Georgia and maybe lead a run on. The other places to look at, of course, are LSU and USC for those two, and perhaps Clemson, right? But Clemson has extended to Corey Foreman and not really extended to Mason Smith. So they might be completely off the board as we see more, of course, the balls come in for USC for Foreman. But with USC, Cal, and the California schools like UCLA still in doubt as whether or not they're going to play football on time, I'm interested to see how this plays out in recruiting because that's fewer official visits you have to extend, fewer opportunities you have for your product to be seen by recruits, and could lead to not just a glut of kids committing to Pac-12 schools, but could heavily influence the likes of Washington as well and Oregon, who are all in this boat with the Pac-12 of we might not have football until October at a minimum, or at the very least won't have any fans in the stands or their parents or recruits at home games in September. So that's another thing to keep an eye on, right? The other to watch, of course, is Clemson, who's always going to be lurking. They're really high on Tristan Lee, who is a 5-star offensive tackle. They really want Peyton Page. We also know that Trey Stellato can help them, and Zaire Patterson can help them along with Nolan Rucci. And they're a couple of high-value 4-stars in there, like, say, Kendall Daniels, for which they could go get after securing Will Shipley last week. Now, losing Corey Foreman does not help them. But if they get him back, which they likely could do, it's the first decommitment in like 5 years, you could expect them to push Ohio State as they're still sitting pretty right there with a chance to finish with the number 1 class with just 10 commits in the boat right now. So they got a lot of room to improve here. The Bayou Bengals are going to be fun. They just picked up a 4-star in Corey Kiner to go along with other 4-stars like Garrett Nussmeier, quarterback, Landon Jackson, defensive end. And then we're talking about other guys like Xavier Carter. So, yeah, I mean, Miller Moss somewhat, maybe. I doubt it. But that's one to look at. And we know that with the number 12 ranked class in the cycle right now, with double-digit commits, the Bayou Bengals have a surge that is coming. And Ed Orgeron is one of the best recruiters in all of college football. And I expect them to finish in the top 10, if not in the top 5. But pushing for number 1, they're going to need some things to break their way, notably Corey Foreman and Mason Smith. And if they're able to add a Kamara Wheaton, yeah, you could definitely see them pushing for that number 2 to number 1 spot. And then, of course, don't sleep on Alabama. Since 2011, they have finished with number 1, number 2 class in most years, like 8 years out of the last 10. And they finished with the, number 1 class of 2011. And we've just seen run after run after run. That 2017 class looks so good. And if you're Nick Saban, you're saying, hey, look, Tua Tagovailoa, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, all those guys went to come play for me. Trayvon Diggs went in the second round. He played for me. You continue to look at guys like, Quinnen Williams last year. Alabama is a factory. Now, in the age of the pandemic, I'm really interested about the recruiting philosophy of one Nick Saban because like Oklahoma and Texas A&M, they're not exactly where they want to be. But knowing what the track record is for a Nick Saban Alabama program, I am not ready to count them out by any stretch of the imagination. So that's who we think is going to be there. But if you're looking at just the rankings themselves and you're looking at the numbers themselves, it's hard to see many people really pushing Ohio State. They're at 295.41. At number 2, the Vols, right now, at number 2, 252.32. And then at number 3, we got North Carolina at 229.38, right? With 21 commitments in the boat and a 252-point score, you might finish number 10 if you're Tennessee, right? You might look at that. Matter of fact, if we just go ahead and put research on this thing where we take a look at the 2020 rankings, we can get an idea of this, RJ. Man, this is stuff that you should. Thank you for watching me this far, right? So let's look at what 252 usually ends up about. Number 16. So Washington was 252.35. All right. So if we're going to give Tennessee 4 more commits, let's put them at about 270, right? So 272.99 finished number 9 last year. That's Florida. And then Tennessee finished 261.50. So Tennessee is right where they should be. And they really need to have an excellent year this year for many folks to believe that they're going to finish within the top 5, let alone inside the top 10. But there's still a lot of moving and shaking in the individual player rankings as well. Because just looking at the top 10 players, only 3 of them are committed. Number 3, Jack Sawyer, a strong side defensive end to Ohio State. Number 9, Sam Heward, pro-style quarterback to Washington. And number 10, Terrence Lewis, who's the highest-rated commit outside linebacker for Tennessee. That means Corey Foreman, JT Tuimoloau, Tommy Brockmeyer, Caleb Williams, Amarius Mims, Tony Grimes, Emeka Egbuka. They're all still on the board, but I count 1, 2, 3 perhaps Ohio State kiddos in there, depending on how you want to situate the Tony Grimes deal. We'll still wait and see on that, right? But they could finish with 4 of the top 10 recruits in the 2021 cycle, which again just shows you just how good Ohio State has been and how good we expect that class to be. All right, that is it from me. Deuces.